Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are back with another video, and we are taking a look at the Philadelphia Flyers, and as they are pushing for a playoff spot here in 2024, it would be the first time since the kind of the shifting of the guard, right? This would be the first playoffs under new captain Sean Couturier, the first playoffs under new head coach John Tortorella, and the first playoffs under new GM Danny Briere. So this would be a pretty big deal for the Philadelphia Flyers if they were to make the playoffs here this season. And they made a little bit of a shakeup in between the pipes the other day as they bring in Ivan Fedotov. We're going to take a look at that today. So obviously, that's been a topic of discussion in Philly land over the last couple of days and around the NHL this weekend. I got a lot of viewership from my video from last year, and as good as it is to see that you guys are watching that video, I'd rather you guys see a more updated video on this topic, because now it has been a year since that whole Fedotov situation happened last year, to the point where I called him Ivan Fedotov. So now we figured out Danny Briere in his press conference, it is, at least the way Briere pronounced it, Fedotov. And so looking at where things are at for the Flyers and Fedotov and just the team overall and everything else, we're going to take a look at that today. So if you guys remember the context of Ivan Fedotov, let's start there, right? He comes over from the KHL, has put up some sick numbers, some really, really good numbers overseas in the KHL with CSKA Moscow. And I believe his save percentage is a .919. His save percentage in 22 games in the playoffs, I think, is almost a .930. He puts up some really good numbers. Now, obviously, the game is very different in the KHL than it is in the National Hockey League, but there's a lot of overlapping things and some similarities that you definitely cannot ignore. Something that you can't teach. They always say that, right? You can't teach size. 6'9" on skates. Pretty big hockey player. He's known for being able to track the puck, and considering you're basically a lighthouse in between the pipes and kind of towering over everybody, it's pretty easy to track the puck. But this is a guy that is very, very capable of just really, he's the kind of goalie that's going to give you consistency. And the Flyers, despite having Sam Ersson, who's played well at points, this is definitely a move that the Flyers felt that they had to make. And the timing is interesting. A lot of Flyers fans and stuff that I've seen, and even in the press conference, they kind of criticized Briere. Like, listen, do you want to be doing this right now? Right? Like, your team is trying to make the playoffs, and now you have all this media coming in. Now you have all this hype around Fedotov. Like, is this really what we want to be talking about, or do you want to focus on the playoffs? And Briere said, we needed to make a change, and we can't make trades right now. It's past the trade deadline, so this was the next best option for us. And I think it comes down to he wanted a shakeup. He wants the room to be a little shook. This is a veteran team for the most part. There's obviously the younger guys in there, but there's a decent amount of older players that will be able to keep the room settled. And I think the reason they're doing this is because they want the shakeup. They want the shakeup, but they want it to be controlled, right? It's a controlled shakeup where it's not going to be complete chaos, but it's also doing something, right? And I think that's kind of where Briere is at with this move. I think it's also a case of circumstance where Fedotov terminated his contract with CSKA Moscow, so that's another thing that's part of it. His whole Russian military situation last year, we talked about in the other video last year, if you want more context beyond that. But for Fedotov, he is coming to the NHL. He's on basically a 3 or 4 month contract with the Flyers and would technically be a free agent in the summer, depending on how things go. Now, here's the thing. The Flyers got to play the happy dance, because if they don't let Fedotov play during the playoffs or the regular season, and again, we're assuming they make the playoffs, we'll see, but it's going to come down to, is he happy here, and does he want to stay? And if he doesn't play any games down the stretch, he might not be so happy about that. But can the Flyers afford, with 8 games left in the season, can they afford to just say, oh, here you go, welcome in, and start playing meaningful games? Like, that's a lot to ask. Now, he is 27 years old. He's not some young rookie 20-year-old kid, but there is still a difference, and that is something that you can't talk about. You can't teach size. Well, you can't teach experience, specifically in the National Hockey League either. And this is going to be a good test for Fedotov. I want to see him maybe play a game or two here down the stretch. It's probably going to give Urson a little break. The goaltending behind Urson has not been great, and I think that's why the Flyers are thinking, listen, he is not, our other options are not any better than Fedotov. He wants to come over. Let's try and get a good relationship going into this summer done, and we could work on an extension at some point. And hopefully he loves it in Philly and he wants to stay there, and then that issue goes away. So the Flyers are trying to kill two birds with one stone, but also trying to make the playoffs. And that's kind of why I think a lot of people are criticizing Briere, because it is risky and it will come back on him if it fails. But if it works, and I think it's a low-risk move here, it should be a payoff long-term for the Flyers. And, that's kind of what happens when you have these guys playing in college or in Russia, is the timing of them coming over doesn't always overlap the way you would like. They don't come into training camp, sign their deal, come into training camp, and then they start the regular season, right? It doesn't work that way for everybody. And in a situation like this, there's a guy that was drafted in the 7th round in 2015. He's been around for a while. It's more so just the circumstance between Fedotov working out and the Flyers. Everything just worked out at the same time, and that's how we got to where we are today. So yeah, like I said, I think a lot of people will criticize this move, but I also think a lot of people see the potential upside here. And listen, another good Russian goalie in the Northeast, I'm totally down for it, right? We've already got Sorokin on the Islanders. We've already got Shesterkin with the Rangers. He mentioned Sergei Bobrovsky because he grew up in the same hometown as Fedotov. But, this is 3 goalies in the Metro that are going to be a problem. And I'm sure everybody else, I'm sure Pittsburgh, I'm sure the Capitals, the Blue Jackets, they're all like, oh, come on. These Russian goalies are taking over our division. So we'll see how things go. But I think this is a good chance here for Fedotov. If he can play well right off the bat, that could be huge for the Flyers. But, I think it's a good bump for Urson, too. And we know the Flyers are not afraid of doing uncomfortable things. They sat their healthy scratch their captain, Sean Couturier, a couple weeks ago against the Leafs. That paid off. I don't think that relationship is going to be too good moving forward, but it did work for the game, right? So, I think doing something like this is along those same lines, right? Mentally stimulating the team and making sure they're focused and kind of knowing that, hey, listen, there's dogs biting at your heels. You got to stay on task. You got to do what you got to do. And that's kind of how I think things are kind of going right now with the Flyers and Ivan Fedotov. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you guys like the move here by the Philadelphia Flyers bringing in Ivan Fedotov? Let me know your thoughts. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.